expanded into doing some Zoom game nights, like including Halloween. We've done origami meetings, other ways to have the kids connect with each other in these wonky times. God bless. Thanks.
Thank you. Sure. I'm going to go next, is what she said for those who still can't hear her. Okay, so I'm Jamie Howard. I've been doing children's ministry for 15 years. And I have actually started up a children's ministry at every church that I've been at. I've worked at 4 different churches. And all of them started with little to no kids and hired me because they wanted something for their kids. And so I was really excited to get to share with all of you today, because that's a real big passion of mine. It was not my goal when I set out into children's ministry to be somebody that became well adept at starting children's ministries from the ground up, but it seems to be what God had planned for me. Um, so our church that I'm at right now, which I've been at for 5.5 years, had 5 kids when Jeremy called me and asked me, actually in a consultation role, because I was on children's staff at a different church, why they should hire somebody and why they should invest in a children's ministry program when they only had 5 kids. And that was up from 2 for the majority of the time up to that point. And I had a lot to say about that, and I want to share that with you. And I really think it's because if you want, it's kind of, if that, you remember Field of Dreams? If you build it, they will come. And if you have families visit your church and there's not something of value for their children, they might not stick around. A lot of families value having their kids in the service with them, and that is a very brethren thing that I'm learning, as I really feel like I'm brethren in my soul. But I only in the last 6 years have known about the brethren or been a part of it. And so it was the norm in the churches that I grew up at to have a children's ministry. And I think it's a norm in our culture. Sorry, I'm talking so fast. I will try to slow down. Okay. I think it's a norm in our culture as well that families expect something for their kids. And it's not childcare. It is the fullness of the gospel in Happy Meal form, meaning we want the kids to understand all of who God is and what that means for them in a way that speaks to them. And when we're speaking out to adults, it doesn't hit kids the same way. And so I am super passionate about that. And even if all you have is 2 kids or 5 kids, I think that that's enough for investment into a program. And when you have a program, kids are going to stick around. And every church is going to do it a little differently. I think it's going to look a little different for your church. For example, I am not bells and whistles, super huge program kind of person, but that fits with the church that we're at and the culture that we have at our church. It's quality content. You know, there have been other churches that I have been a part of where the part of their culture was big programming, and so that's what the program looked like. And so I want to be a support to you guys, and I want to answer questions that you might have about why that needs to be invested. But I'm a big proponent of that. And our church went so far as not just to say, hey, we need a program and I think we should get some volunteers together, but they created a staff position for that. Now it was a part-time. I started at 10 hours a week at my church, but that was what they could afford at the time. And so it was enough time to start a program. That's not enough time for somebody to really build a huge program. The more kids you get, the more programming that takes, the more staff time you're going to need. But even if all you have is just a little bit, in order to invest in somebody to have dedicated time to work, because it's not just programming on Sunday mornings, it's also building a volunteer team and training and equipping those volunteers and building relationships with families and kids and time investment there. So Anyway, I feel like I've talked for more than 5 minutes, but I could go all day on this. I know. And I can talk more specifics down the line if people are curious about what the steps were and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know if you're out there and you're thinking, is this something that's worth my time? I would say absolutely 100%, 1000%. And if that's the direction that you want your church to go in, is to be able to capture more families and more kids, then you've got to have something for them. Joe, she's calling on you.
Okay, welcome people. I'm an attendee at Restoration Los Angeles, which is in East Los Angeles, the end of the gold, couple blocks from the end of the Gold Line, Beverly and Atlantic, if you know Los Angeles. And so 10 years ago, there were a couple of kids who were related to the kids of the leaders. And they were not exactly excited about being in classes in church or whatever, because that's all they did. And so the ministry to children developed like this, and it really impacted our neighborhood. So now 10 years later, we, right before COVID, we had about 20 kids in the first session, and in the second service, there could be 30 kids, although sometimes everyone's on vacation and you have 2 kids and 10 kids. It varies a lot because families do a lot of things. But at the beginning, Pastor Jody talked people into being in charge of different ministries and set it up so that every year we all lose our jobs and they have a jobs fair and you have to repick and join a new ministry or the same one if you really liked it. And I loved that aspect because I've been in churches before. Once you volunteered, it was an eternal ministry. And it made it hard to attract volunteers because they knew once you raise your hand and say yes, you're never let go. And so here, every year you have to let go. It's kind of strange, but I keep re-upping and re-choosing the children's ministry. Our content mirrors what they're doing in the adult church. The kids participate in worship with their parents, and then they come over to the children's room, and we have kindergarten through 11 years old. So we have quite a spread. The older kids help the younger kids. And we always have at least 2 teachers. Sometimes we have 3 teachers. So even when we only have 1 or 2 kids, we have 2 teachers. And so if there's almost no kids or if there's no kids, the teachers get to teach each other. So we get to use our preparation no matter what happens. The preparation is worthwhile. Because when I teach it to another teacher or when they teach me, I learn new things. So the preparing for the kids changes Joe. So it's worthwhile preparation no matter how many kids there are. It's worthwhile preparation. And since I'm learning and enjoying from it, the kids seem to learn and enjoy what they're learning. We always connect with the parents afterwards. When I'm teaching, I have a handout I give to the parents and say, this is what we talked about. And I've told the kids ahead of time, you get to tell your parents about this and you can teach it to them. And many of my kids do. They teach it to their parents afterwards, and their parents really seem to like that, where the kids teach the parents. It's different from when kids come home and they say, what did you do at school? I go, oh, nothing. Instead, the parents have a cheat sheet and the kids are all ready to teach them and show them their crafts or whatever. And our lead teachers have changed every few years because that is a lot of work. And they provide us with, a craft, and our pieces that we teach from. And like I say, it's grown from about 2 kids to 20 to 50 on a Sunday. During COVID, we have done differently. The teachers have divided up the kids, and we've done more one-on-one, or I should say, I always contact my kids through the parents, so the kids don't have their own phones. Even if they did, I would still do it through the parents. So it's a Joe talking with parents and kids, often with Zoom or various other ways. There's still children's ministry going on, but it's a very different flavor than before.
For sure. Yes, I hear that. I think Bonnie's next. Or Carlene's gonna go. I think so, as long as all the attendees can hear you, and I think they said that they could, so. Can't hear. They can't hear you. Yeah, let's have Bonnie go next.
I'm not hearing Bonnie.
I can hear you.
Okay, let me try ending the translation and for a while. And
Judy, can you hear me? Judy said she. Oh.
Pastor Gilberto.
Buenas tardes, hermano Pastor Juan. Pablo, ¿cómo está?
Bien, señor.
No sé, no los puedo escuchar muy bien a ellos porque no sale la.
Okay, since translation is off now, everyone can hear Gilbert.
And it seems that maybe Carlene and I aren't visible either.
Yeah, some people
Well, it
can't.
doesn't matter if you're visible. It matters if they can see you. Can you guys, now they can see you, now they can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right.
Fine.
I was kind of planning to go after Carlene, so I'm trying to think how I need to reword this a little bit, but I did agree to chair what we call our Christian Education Commission for the 3rd time about 5 years ago. And I'm currently still serving on the commission, but I passed the chair position on to Carlene. And I feel like I'm on about a 12-year rotation. I'm 6 years on that committee and 6 years off. We don't have that 1-year term that Joe was just talking about. But since my paid job is also with young children and families, it's just hard for me to stay away from the opportunity to work in that same area in my church. So I took the job again right at the time that our Sunday school population was really not large enough or consistent enough to justify having teachers prepare a lesson every week, especially in a graded, separately graded format. So we had even started experimenting with changing our commission's name, thanks to my dear friend and pastor, Erin Madison, who some of you may know. She wanted to indicate spiritual formation in our title rather than education. And that rather long name chosen never did roll off my tongue, but the idea of looking at our youth and children through this ideal of spiritual formation really did help me and my commission to be more creative and excited about the possibilities of how to support children and youth growing up in our church family. We didn't always have to be teaching them. We could be providing opportunities consciously crafted to lead them to wonder and awe and wise choices and social justice. We began to look for activities and topics that could be based on biblical teachings, but anchored in current world and community events.
Okay, Bonnie, if you, if you can break up as you go along, continue from right where you are with the social justice and do a sentence or two, and then Gilbert will do it in Spanish, because now we're all on the same channel. And
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so that's how we got your voice, yours and Carlene's voices back. So we're all on one channel. So do your next couple of sentences, and then Gilbert will make them into Spanish.
Okay. So in that process, we came up with a monthly Friday night program that we still have in place, even though the pandemic has canceled a few meetings and Zoomed a couple more. And of course, I can't hear Gilbert, so I
No,
don't know
he's
when you-
muted.
Gilbert, you're gonna have to go, tell me to start
He's-
again.
He's muted. He's gonna have to unmute himself.
Okay,
There he is.
okay. You hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, just take it easy.
Okay, continue from where you were.
Okay, hermano Juan Pablo, aquí estoy, okay?
Señor, no hay problema. Aquí yo
I
también
got
estoy.
Juan Pablo on the phone, so we're good.
Okay,
O sea, dígale que sigan común y corriente y usted me da el concepto. O sea, no quiero que paren solo por mí.
No, no te apures. She's worried that you guys are gonna stop for him. No, está bien, Juan Pablo.
Okay.
so these family unity nights,
Estas
formed
unidades de las
are still
familias
intact.
están
And
todavía
we are reaching out to them, to this group that we formed before COVID monthly. And we've been delivering activities, emailing, sending cards, and then having a few virtual activities like last month's pumpkin carving party by Zoom. But before COVID, we had set up the program as an activity night and a free dinner for families with children in elementary school. And we just invited the kids that had been at our church in any way, shape, or form that we knew of, kids that I knew from the community, other teachers knew some children, and grandchildren were invited. And we would set this up with a make and take type of craft. And once everyone had arrived, we all sat down for dinner together and discussed the table topics that we provided. Dinner was followed with games, a couple of activity stations, and a closing song circle and prayer. So each month we chose a theme, usually a character trait or a Bible verse. And we tried to carry that through the evening with what we said, learned, prayed, and sang. And we have families attending to this day that go to other churches on Sundays, as well as the families who are regular members of our congregation. How are we doing, Gilbert? Okay, my next paragraph is up here. One of the other things that our church tried on at that juncture 5 years ago was similar to what Jamie was saying. We needed some paid staff help to, just to re-energize. And we applied and received a district level grant, and we made it a half-time temporary position. I understand that there are still some district funds available for that kind of thing currently, so be thinking about that for your churches as well. And one of my favorite memories of working with our coordinator, Tara, was her suggestion as we got ready for one of those first family enrichment nights, we named them. She says, we're running around getting things together. She says, why don't we call this family unity night? And then it could be fun as an acronym. And so her idea stuck immediately, and we've had fun ever since. And that's the kind of person and the energy that Tara brought. She really did bring ideas to our planning, a new focus. She wasn't Brethren herself. She just kind of came in with ideas and ran them by us. And if we felt comfortable, great. She jump-started our team when we were at a low point, and it really helped us do that hard work of starting new traditions and maintaining our focus on reaching out to young families and children. So I'm thinking that the time is about where I should let Carlene continue with other things that have gone on at our church. And I'll speak about Peace Week, Carlene, if there's time later.
Yeah, I'm just
I can hear you.
thinking how I can shorten this so that we still have time for those questions, because I see Jamie's saying that there's people with questions. And I think I want to just say that we had one boy that was attending our church when this was in 2016, and our Christian Ed Commission had said we weren't going to have Sunday school anymore, and they were ready to disband because of the lack of children. And that really shocked some of us into really getting on our stick and trying to find something to do. I want to just say 3 things that I feel were crucial for building a program. One was we created a program that was there every Sunday for children, whether there were children or not. There was a program there. If we had a visitor walk into church with children, we had something for those children. The second was a lot of inviting went on. And I'm telling you, I'm not an inviting person. Until this time, I had never invited anyone to church. I hate going out and talking to a stranger about church, but I did it. And then the third thing I think that was really crucial was that our program had enjoyable lessons and fun. And I cannot emphasize the fun enough, because I think kids get a lot of lessons in school all week. And so we give them a small dose of the lesson, and then we have fun. I think the one thing that I would like to say, if you're starting a children's program, is to find a passionate, organized, fun-loving, child-oriented person. And if you don't have that person in your congregation, you need to hire it. And you need to hire it right away, because this is so crucial for your church and for the children today.
Mhm.
That's it. So let's hear some
Good,
questions.
Carlene. So the question, oh, it's gone now.
Oh,
Eric had asked, what characteristics and personality traits should a church look for in a children's minister, which you kind of spoke to just now, but we can all speak to that. Also, how important are experience and education, and how does a congregation move towards adopting a safe spaces program and plan? Good questions. Let's start with what characteristics and personality traits should a church look for in children's minister?
I think you should answer that.
She is one
You're
now.
our only staff person
I am
here.
one.
Just
You
hire
know,
Jamie.
No, Carlene, I agree with you. You know, this is something that is my heart's cry. I came to know the Lord when I was a kid, and so I feel like that is why this is what I want to do. But I think you need to find somebody that really fits with the mode of your church. When I came to Circle of Peace, it felt like a good fit on both sides. Just who I am and who I've grown to in ministry, who I know God made me to be. I mean, I love kids, that's a given, but who God made me to how God made me to minister fits so well with the core values of this church and the way that they operate. And if you have somebody that comes in with an energy that doesn't vibe with your church, it doesn't matter how much they love kids, it might not be a good fit. So I think that's a really important piece too, that they hold the core values in the same respect, and that they fit with the way the ministry works at your church. You know, every church has a kind of a different vibe and different priorities of ministry, or how things work, or how things play out, what comes first. And I think that matters when it looks, you know, how would they fit into that groove? And does anybody else have something to add?
Well, I think that the personality ended up being the most important thing as we were interviewing. Of course, we asked for experience and training, but it was part-time and temporary. And we didn't get a lot of, university graduates who majored in children's ministries coming, sending us resumes. But they had all the people that we ended up interviewing, I think there were 4, had worked in their churches in in their youth groups or as a volunteer in some other type of nonprofit situation, and had passion. And then it became also the issue of, was it a good fit with their views, not only of God, of their relationship with God, but also how they saw the community, because we're an open and affirming church. We really needed to be absolutely sure that any children who were LGBTQ would be affirmed and just welcomed into the group. So that was a big issue for us.
Mm-hmm. And that speaks to making sure that you have somebody that has the same heart carried throughout your whole community. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep. And just so that you guys know too, so I'm the children's director at our church, but I don't have a degree in children's ministry or ministry at all. Actually, I went to ASU, and my degree is in family studies and human development.
Oh.
And I chose that intentionally because I didn't know what God was going to use me for. I wanted to do children's ministry. I had a heart for children's ministry, but I didn't know if that was going to be my professional career or if that was going to be something that I volunteered in and God called me somewhere else. But I knew I wanted to work with kids and families. And so that's why I chose a secular degree, because that supports a lot, in my opinion, that supported a lot more and could get me in a lot more doors than a ministry degree. And so I think experience matters, and I think education matters, but I don't think it's the only thing. And I would highly recommend, just given my experience and my own bent, that you don't just narrow it to somebody with a ministry degree. I think theology matters. I think their relationship with God matters, but you can have a conversation about that. They don't have to, in my opinion, they don't have to have gone to seminary in order to be in a leading role in a church. And so when you're looking or when you're thinking about building a job description, kind of think on those things. Joe or Linda, do you guys have anything to add, or Carlene?
No, I think that's well done.
Yeah.
What other questions do we have?
Yeah.
So that was personality. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
There's one other aspect to Eric's question, the nuts and bolts of the boring part of providing safe children's ministry. And that is both in camps, churches, every group that has families. How do you do it safely? And if you contact the district office for free, we have resources and can connect you up with the group that does the national background checks for the national office in the district and many of our churches. And so we can help you set that aspect up. That's sort of invisible, but I know when we announce for kids to go off to children's ministries, the pastor usually mentions, and all of our teachers have passed background checks, on an annual basis, and he lists those couple of things that they do to check up on us all the time. And it makes the teachers feel safer, and the parents go, oh, that's great. And the other thing that we always do is that parents at any time can drop in and observe.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have an invisible group. So we always know that somebody can come and observe us, and which is good, especially for kids that come up and cry the first few times.
Yeah.
Their parents can sit with them.
And I mean, I think there's some basic stuff like having background checks, like having a training program for volunteers so that you can tell your parents, everybody's gone through this kind of a training. Here's the training manual. I'd love to, if you're curious about what they're trained on, here's the things that we go through, and some simple things like a check-in process. Even if you don't have a fancy check-in system, which investing in one doesn't take that much money, honestly, in a simple check-in system, but having some kind of a check-in process with some kind of a claim process. I always tell our parents that's your claim ticket, just like baggage. But it helps them know that you're being intentional about who's back there and and who can go back there and who's going to be allowed to pick up the kids and what the procedure is for that, and that there is a procedure for that. That for me as a parent, that makes me feel better if I go to a different church or I'm out of town and I take my kids somewhere. And then also safety things that we don't always think about, because we think about, are the kids safe, but also asking questions when you have new families about allergies for kids, making sure that you're looking out for things like that, because you don't want to inadvertently send someone to the emergency room because you gave them a snack with peanuts in it. And just, those are some basic things. But Linda, did you have something to say? Oh, you looked like you were raising your hand.
So, yeah, we have a check-in system very similar to that.
With a claim ticket?
Mhm.
And they're really not that expensive. A couple $100 will get you a little brother, like a printer, and it can connect to a laptop and you're good to go. And it's important. Are there any other questions? I know that a lot of you guys probably came here with different expectations or different needs, or you're at different points in this process. So we would love to hear if you guys have any more questions.
I'm just wondering if, Joe, you know what the grant is for helping churches maybe get a Christian ed person?
Well, you could send in again to that same, you can send an email to frontdesk@pswdcob.org, and I'll send you the application. There's a funding application, and I forget when Russ is doing an insight session on that process, but it's a very easy application, and you could read it through. If you fill it out the first time and it's not quite right, I get right back to you and say, give us a little more detail here or there. And so I help you with your application. And there is funding to help get things started like that. And I know several of the churches with children's ministries have actually applied for funds, and they've got them.
And this is specifically for people, like not materials and people, but specifically people, right?
There's a number of different grants for all different things. So if you send me an email
Right.
telling me what your needs are, I'll tell you what grant to fill out.
Joe's
Wonderful.
your guy.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my other hat is office worker.
We often have multiple hats.
Yeah. I think it was very helpful for us to get our grant when we first started out. Just to have that support of that person, I think it was, we had other people that were working, but I thought it was very supportive to have a staff person.
And it actually kind of got buy-in from the whole congregation that way too. It wasn't just, okay, that commission will handle the children. This was, it became it was a board item. It was then a congregational vote, so everyone was really having to think about how important that was to them. And that was a great thing too.
Our church, we often use the phrase making space to make disciples. And I think that's a good way to think about something like this, especially if you don't have any kids yet or families with kids. This is an investment to make space to make disciples. And it's a little bit of a self-fulfilling situation. I came into it knowing that I would start at a certain level, 10 hours a week. And if I didn't do things that caught more families, that my position wouldn't grow past that. And if I wanted my position to grow, then I needed to catch more families. And it's a business, you want to come at it with a ministry heart, but you also have to think logistically. And the logistics side of it is, if you invest in somebody at this level, then they're going to create a space that catches more people, and then you might be able to grow to this level, and then that's going to create momentum in a space that gets you to here, that gets you to here, that, you know what I mean? And so I think it's an important way to think about it. from a leadership perspective, if you don't have a leader, it's going to be really hard to have any followers at all, you know?
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think, you know, Jesus is our leader, but I think when it comes to kids, having things that hit them at their level, that matter to them, that help them with that transformation process at their level, is so important, and you're not going to get them otherwise. And so, yeah, making space to make disciples. That's a
Mhm.
good little nugget that I think about a lot. It's a catchphrase at our church.
Yeah, to me, I think that in the past, our children's program has not had top priority.
Mm.
And I see now that how important it is, even to the whole church, to have a really healthy children's program, because that brings in families,
Mhm.
young families. And
And great questions too, right? Those kids
Yeah.
ask great questions.
Yeah. They are for real, man. We
Yeah.
don't mess around. People think, fluff and stuff. No way, fluff and stuff. We talk about life
Right.
and death. We talk about why does God allow evil when he's a good God. We talk about all kinds of stuff. Those kids have
Yep.
great questions.
yeah.
I see another question.
Oh.
Oh, sorry, Linda, go ahead.
Just briefly, I did forget to offer, I put together a one-page dealing with feelings during the pandemic. And for the emotional health, the social health, dealing with the trauma, be happy to send this to anybody who sends me an email. And it also involves some songs and like turning lemons into lemonade and how prayer can help as well. And I did want to say briefly that when we do our joys and concerns, we also refer to them as what lemons have you had in your life this past week, and what lemonade. And it just warms my heart that one of my kiddos takes me up on the invitation most times for her to wrap those up in prayer, which we do every time we meet.
She's a leader.
Yeah.
Um,
It kind of
train
answers
her
the
now.
question, the remaining question about starting in the age of COVID and Zoom. Starting is tough, but the handout that Linda's talking about sounds like it might be wonderful in terms of just getting your head in the right space for
Yeah.
Well,
reaching
and
out.
briefly to that question, I mean, a lot of the programming, as you guys know, has moved to Zoom, and we've been able, I mean, we switched, I think we had 1 week where we didn't have Zoom or digital offerings, and then we've been doing it this whole time, and we've had pretty successful times with our kids via Zoom. It just takes a lot more communication with parents. And a lot of extra miles. We've done drop-offs to families monthly so that the kids have something in their hands that they can use to interact with us, even if it's just they hold up that thing to raise their hand or whatever. So it does present a challenge, Amy, I hear you. One thing that our church has sort of circled around is we know more about COVID now than we did at the beginning. And so we have developed sort of like with talking to our health experts and talking to the city and all of that stuff, sort of there are 3 things that can help you mitigate from getting COVID: being outdoors, being masked, and being distanced. And so we're shooting for 2 out of the 3. We just started meeting again outdoors. So we're telling people, you know, we're shooting for 2 out of the 3: outdoors, masked, and being distanced. So if you're outdoors and you're distanced, it's okay if you don't have a mask on. Most of our people choose to wear them anyway. But or if you're going to go inside, then you're not going to be outdoors anymore. So we're asking that you wear a mask, and that has freed up for us to be able to do in-person kids church now too, or even an in-person game night or a drive-in movie night that's more distance, where they're not sharing supplies or things like that. So there might be maybe monthly opportunities where you can gain some momentum. Amy, to your question about starting something that maybe applies sort of that keeping things safe and outside, especially now that it's cooler, and it's not so hot. And that would be my idea for if you want to try to start something during this season, try to do it in a safe way and gain momentum that way. Does that make sense? Do you parenting kids at church?
I know I was
I'm
wondering
not sure what that
Bernardo-
question means.
Can Bernardo explain?
Mm,
Yeah, I was trying to.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, you guys. Okay. I mean, I don't have kids my own, but I just you know, I want to know how you guys go with kids. Like, you guys volunteer, like, sort of churches, will you guys have their own ministry where you have kids? Because I was kind of off and on with the, you know, like, microphones here. That's why I couldn't understand how you guys work with the kids. That's the question. How where you guys work where do you guys work with the kids? I mean, at school.
Oh, where
Or,
do we work with them?
Church.
that's the question. Church.
So do you mean where do we work with the kids? Like any kids that we have there?
Yes.
Oh, at the church itself, where do we, how do we set up a space for the children?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Well, at our church, when I first started, they were having the kids in the back of the main sanctuary at a table coloring, which is why they hired me. And we're fortunate to have a building. And so we started doing kids ministry stuff in a separate room. And we started that transition, since our church was accustomed to having the kids in the service the whole time, by starting out with families all together, and they would spend the first part of our service with their family. That was usually the time with the music and the worship. And then before the sermon started, the kids would get dismissed, and we would all walk back to the kids ministry room and do a lesson at their level. And that's sort of how we started that transition. And then after a little while, we just started it where, you know, kids went to their class and adults went to their class. And then a couple times a year, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, there's a 5th Sunday, where there's 5 Sundays in a month instead of 4. And so on that 5th Sunday, we use that as an opportunity. We call it Family Sunday, 5th Sunday, Family Sunday. And we keep the kids in the service, and we have it more oriented towards families all together, so that we don't lose that aspect of families getting to worship together, kids staying familiar with what big church is like, although kids' church is way more fun. But
Yeah.
I mean,
that's good.
does that
keep
answer
telling-
your question?
Yes, that's good.
What about
idea,
you
and
guys? Does
yes.
anybody do anything different than that?
That
That sounds
quite
a lot like
ours.
our church.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Although
it-
I will also say that when we do our events for children and families that aren't on Sundays, we've kind of sometimes taken over the sanctuary, and other times taken over the kitchen and cooked all together. And so we just
Right.
ask permission, or sometimes we do it and then ask permission. But trying to, you know, really utilize the space that we have to reach out and make the families feel comfortable there.
I don't know, Joe, are we up with our time, or how are we doing?
Yeah, so we are now just past 8 o'clock. I know we did mess up a lot of minutes at the beginning. If anybody does want to talk for a little bit more, we could do a few more questions. I don't have another meeting I have to go to, so um,
I'm available for a little bit longer if we have more questions.
Okay.
um,
Or I put my email in the chat. If anybody wants to just contact me directly, I'd be happy to have a conversation.
Yeah. I could talk a little bit more about publicity. I don't know if folks are tuned into that very much, but I feel like publicity is really important. And so when we have, I've put up posters in our lobby of pictures of the kids in children's church doing the activities for the lesson, I think that having posters in the lobby keeps our congregation more in tune with something's going on. The kids aren't just disappearing, but they're in tune with what's going on. I try to put some things in our newsletter, church newsletter, about maybe things that we're learning, and more pictures. I think pictures are great. And then there's also people that come into our church that aren't members that would see those posters too. So I think publicity is important. We buy a big banner when we have our Peace Week and put that out in front of the church.
Do any
If
of you
I could
guys
say-
utilize Facebook at all?
We're
Yes.
starting to.
Getting better. It's been available and we've sporadically used it, I must say.
And if I could jump in quickly, having parents sign a photo release.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you have parents who drop their kids off and leave, or kids come by themselves, having them provide the emergency medical information and
Mhm.
contact.
Mhm.
So
Good point.
of course, when you're Zooming, you don't need to worry so much about that. But yeah,
You
when you're,
you do need permission for pictures though.
that is true. That is true.
Our church has a main Facebook page that a lot of our all of our information goes out on, and then we have a kids Facebook page and we have a kids Facebook group.
Ah.
And the page is more public, anybody can see it, so that's where a lot of the information goes up there, questions that follow up with our curriculum, stuff to kind of engage people on a regular basis. And then our Facebook group is for people that call our church home. And that's where we'll do engaging content for the kids, ask parents, hey kids, this week we're doing a Bible verse challenge. Have your parents record you in your favorite place in your house saying to this month's Bible verse, and then post it onto the group. So it's private and they have to ask for admittance. And so it's a safer space for pictures and content like that to be shared. But we do oftentimes on the page, which is the more public one, I will post with the photo waiver, but like pictures of something that we just did. I'll create, like a little collage or something. And then I will also share that once it's posted to our church's main Facebook page. So everybody that's on that one gets to see the stuff and the link to the kids' Facebook page, which also is in front of their faces on a regular basis. So it's kind of the idea of a virtual poster in the lobby.
Yeah,
Mhm.
excellent. We need to use our Facebook better.
But it also is good to know the difference between a page and a group.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be
Are
good.
there any other questions? I want to make sure that those attendees, I know it's past time, but if there's anything that you guys were hoping here to come and hear about, that you didn't get to hear about, or that you still have lingering, I want to make sure we get to that. So
Okay.
Gilbert, did you raise your hand? Did you have a question? Or did somebody have a question? No, okay.
Oh,
I know, I talk way too fast. I'm so sorry.
oh, that was to slow it down.
I
Thank
know.
you, everyone, for
Yes.
your patience and your
Yeah.
question.
And thank you, panelists. I
Oh, thank you,
really
Carleen.
appreciate you folks, all the information. I am hopeful that the district may provide some training for leaders in children's ministry. I think that would be well spent. And
That
I
would be
would
awesome.
certainly appreciate it. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that is among the grant possibilities. So
Well, that's great.
send your questions as to what kind of a grant you're looking to get, and I'll send you the right form.
All right. And thank you, Gilbert, for hanging in there with the translation.
Um,
Yes.
Sorry.
It-
I know, I'm the worst.
That's sort of like children's ministry. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, for
Yes.
sure.
Oh,
Yes.
did you see Mary Kay's?
Yeah, Mary Kay was
comment?
saying that.
The same is true with grown-up ministry, except for grown-ups pretend like nothing unusual is happening. Is that you know, and you can. It's easier to fix it if people let you know. So
Yeah. And our kids have been so resilient in our Zooming. It is wonderful to see their creativity and the problem solving and yes, so. And thank you, Carlene, for being our fearless leader in this.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, folks.
gathering.
Appreciate it very much.
All right.
Night, everybody.
Night.
Good night. We will end it
Take
here then.
care.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.